What's up, guys? Let's take a look at another CodeWars exercise. This one's called Statistics for an Athletic Association. We get race results, hour, minute, second. It looks like these are half marathons because I think that applies to 1 or 2 hour-ish. And we're going to read the data, find a few stats, the range, the average, and the median, and then we spit out a little result in the right format. So I like this because I think it's very realistic. It's the kind of thing that would happen if you're the computer guy and people send you stuff and ask you to work with it. And B, it's just a lot of little steps. You might have a problem to find the range. You might have a problem to find the average. And if we add up all those little steps, we've got a big program. So let's get started. I might say, I don't want to write it all in one function. I'm going to make little ones. Just like I said, they have names already because we have names for things like average and range, and they're separate jobs that just happen to come together. So instead of writing it all here, I'm going to make a few others. I'm going to say right at the beginning we're going to read the data. Sometimes we use the term read or parse, or I'm going to call it decode. We're going to decode the data. I don't really have a good parameter name yet. And then at the end, we're going to encode the data back into that form, which is why I like using decode and encode, because they're parallel, they're symmetrical. If you see one, you know that it has a partner on the other side. Okay? So ideally, we'll decode it into a form we like, do all the work in the form we like, and then at the last second, put it back in this form that we have to use, even if it's not convenient. Okay? And then along the way, we're going to find the range. Well, look at that, it changed color because range is already a meaningful function in Python for I in range 5 or whatever, and I don't want to step on their toes, so I'm going to go underscore range just to show that it's my own little thing. And it's the range of what? Well, in this case, it's times. I'm just going to say sequence because it could be whatever. And then we're also going to have average. And we're also going to have, or I could call it like numbers for the parameter. And we're also going to have median. Okay, so if each one of these does a little job, maybe just one line, then the main function, the stat, just has to put them together. It's going to be pretty short. Let's say, what does it have to do? We're going to get a string that looks like a time and then a comma, maybe a space. They say maybe a space, and then another time, and then a comma, and then maybe a space, and so on. Okay, so somewhere along the way, we're going to start by split on the comma, and then we have a choice. What about the spaces? We can either get rid of them all before we start, or we could use the strip method to peel them off of each one individually. I think either one's fine. Let's say, what would happen if we replace all the spaces with nothing before we start, and then we don't have to worry about any spaces. And then once we do that, it's still not ready to do any math. It's still just string. It's still just some characters. But then I'm going to pass it to the decode function. So like this is all we have to do on that first pass, that first level. We just split it. And then we pass it to the decode and say, hey, you figure out how many seconds this is or whatever. So let's go decode. I don't know why I'm saying T for time, but we could try something else. Okay, so times, and I know this is an ugly line. This is like the first line of defense. I always think of a biological analogy. In my body, the organs are sending red blood cells and glucose to each other, and that's fine. But the dangerous part is when I breathe and I take in air, maybe there's mold. Maybe there's gross stuff in there. Or when I eat and I take in food and maybe there's some kind of undigestible poison. So when you take in, that's the tricky part. So when we take in this string, we gotta split it, strip it, remove things, arrange things. And once we get it into a nice little number, we can work with that. So let's try to do that. In our decode function, I'm gonna spit out just seconds. So what I'm imagining is 8,000 seconds for 2 hours or something like that. And then we don't have to worry about the units. We don't have to worry about comparing hours and minutes and seconds. We just say it's all one currency. It's all just seconds. Okay, it's just a number. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to say, when you send me one of these in the decode function, I'm going to go, okay, split it on the bar or the pipe character, and then call those hour, minute, second, and then we return hour times a big number plus minute times a medium number plus second. So this is like converting it all into one thing, but I don't trust that. We got to test it. So let's say print decode of the first one. See what happens. No, that's not right, because it multiplied a string, and when you multiply a string, it just keeps going forever. So we got thousands of ones, which is not what I meant. We have to turn that into an integer, because I don't want the character 1, I want the quantity 1, okay? So we could say int, we could go map. Map says, here's a thing, apply it to all of these guys. So if I test it now, oh, look at that, 4559, that's how many seconds is an hour and 15 minutes and 59. So now that's just a number that I can work with. I could add those, multiply those, whatever. Okay. Is there another issue that might show up later? Yeah, but that's a good test to get us started. And so now we could apply that to the whole thing. We could say print times and see if that's working for the big list of all of them. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So on our first run, we get here's a quantity, and they all look reasonable. If I got one that was like 20 digits, or if I got one that was negative, then I would know something's probably wrong. So let's do some of these math steps because they're really simple. For example, the range, we can say the biggest and the smallest. Let's get the difference, okay? Max minus min. You could also sort the whole thing and take the edges, but this is simpler. And then speaking of just using built-in functions, we can do that for average too. We can go the sum divided by the length, the amount, the count. Okay, so these are probably right. We might have to adjust something, but it's a good start. And then the median is going to be a little bit annoying because they have some, well, they have more directions. You can always tell it's like short, short. Oh no. They say, well, if you've got an even number, it's not easy, because an odd, for example, if there were 7, we could have 3 on one side, 3 on the other, and then that 1 in the middle. But if there were 8, we'd have 4 and 4. And who's in the middle? Well, we take the 2 closest to the middle and average them. So we got to work on that. Let's save that for later. Let's try to do the encode, because when I'm testing these, I want it to get a nice pretty output that'll tell me hour, minute, second instead of just 5,000 seconds or something. So let's do this output as well. And luckily, we've done this kind of thing a few times. We've done making change, where you say how many quarters, dimes, nickels is that? Or we've done Roman numerals, where you say how many, L's and X's and V's is that. So here's a similar issue. We go, how many H's, M's, and S's is that? Okay. And the way we did that was a function called divmod. We divide and modulo at the same time. So I'm going to go H. I guess we'll call this S because it's taking amount of seconds. I don't know why I'm doing single letters, but we'll see. Divmod of S, and I'm typing 60 times 60 instead of actually doing it and typing 3600 because A, I might do it wrong and type the wrong number. B, I think this is nice and readable because I can see, oh, it's like seconds and then another layer of hours. Plus, Python compiles that before it runs. It doesn't slow it down or anything. It's fine. And then the leftover, we'll peel off as many minutes as we can of those seconds. And then we return the pipe layout. So we go H pipe M pipe S. Okay, so now we're getting close to being able to test this. Let's try to get a nice output. Even though it won't pass everything, it'll be enough to look at and get something going. So I'm just gonna copy this and say return. What are we doing? We're doing range of times. No. Encode of range of times. And then I'll just copy that for the other guys. Maybe it's too much for one line and we'll space it out. You could type average with only left hand. And then you cannot type median with only left hand. Okay. So let's just have this return something so that it's workable, and then we'll test it out. All right. So range is right. Look at that. Hour, minute 18, hour, minute 18. Average is kind of right, but ugly. So we have to do some amount of rounding. And do we do it while it's still in second mode, or do we do it at the last second when we're printing this? I think we can fix it easily by just changing this, okay? Division is always the troublemaker. When we plus, minus, or times, we give it some integers and we get back an integer. But when you try to divide, you might get back a non-integer number, or you might get back an error, and it's always tricky. So most languages have what they call integer division, floor division, where it'll basically round down, and that gets rid of the issue of types. We don't have to worry about getting back a different type, a floating point number. We just go double slash, that's the way Python does it, to get that guaranteed integer, which I think will work here. Let's run that. Average 138.5, yes, except you'll notice that we are missing the guaranteed 2 digits for each slot. Like if you look at a scoreboard, a digital basketball score or something, it'll say 09 when you have 9 points because they've got 2 slots. So we need to do that. My 1118 should be 010118, and the same thing that I just noticed on that average. So how are we going to do that? I believe you go 02 to say like it's 2 and it's filled with O's. And if I don't remember right, if that is way off, then we can just Google it. But no, that is right. That's good. So in F strings, you have a lot of formatting options like rounding or trimming or whatever. In this case, it's called padding. You're adding stuff to pad it to a certain size and fill up that amount of characters. All right, so let's see here. I think we just got to do the median, so let's give it a shot. What we're going to do is we're going to go sequence to the length divided by 2, is that right? So if you imagine there are 7, and we go 7 integer division 2, that will give us 3. So if it's an index, it's like 0, 1, 2, 3 is our guy, 4, 5, 6, that's in the middle. Is that right? No. And the reason why is because I forgot to sort. The median only makes sense if they're in order, and they're not actually given to us in order except by pure luck. So maybe I'll go sorted sequence at that index. And hey, we got some of them right. Now this is going to fail when the median is of an even numbered length list. So if I've got like 8 things, I can't just take the 4th or whatever. So, okay, let's do that. Let's say if the length is odd, we do this. If it's even, we do that. Okay. Okay, so I'm still passing the ones that I passed, but now I'm failing. Yeah. Okay. Oh, is that? Well, we'll come back to that later. Okay, so what do we do for this? We have to find like a left and right or a midpoint or something. Let's say len of sequence divided by 2 minus 1. So if you imagine there's 8 and we divide by 2, we get 4. But 4 is the right side of our middle because you go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we got to go minus 1. So what I'm thinking is like we do that plus the next one. So we're going to go something like this. See what happens. Okay. We got an error. What's going on with the error? Oh, I forgot, because this is actually more than one thing. We got to take the average of it. So I could just add those two and divide, but since I already have an average function that we just made, let's just use that. So average of those guys. Okay. Oh my gosh, we passed, but that's just the baby tests. If I hit the button to do all the big tests, then we'll see for real. Okay. Hey, look at that. We did pass. Are you sure? Because I think we forgot something, which is what happens if they give us a blank? Because I remember this part failing sometimes. Here's the issue. This has random tests, and random tests might not check what they're supposed to check. For example, what if they give us an empty string? No times at all, no vertical bars, no commas, no nothing. Would this work? No, this would fail. But the random test just happened to give me stuff that worked. Okay. I gotta add that in there. I know I could let it pass me, but I'm not. I have some self-respect, right? So if not string, meaning if it's empty, we're gonna return quotes, which means an empty. And they tell us that at the very bottom. They just didn't check it because I got a weird streak of luck in those random tests, okay? So if I hit attempt again, oh, they're passing me, but they still shouldn't, because I know that when I was trying this earlier in class, they got me with this, which is to say, what if we get these vertical pipes with nothing in between? If it's like O2, pipe, pipe, and then 45 seconds, and there's nothing in the minutes, this line would have a problem, because it would say, hey, we can't turn an int, we can't take the int of empty string. So if I change something, it's gonna hit attempt. Oh my gosh, it keeps passing even though it shouldn't be letting me pass. I'm gonna say, okay, int x or 0. This is how I fixed it earlier for x in this stuff, okay? So if they happen to test vertical pipes with nothing in between, this would fail and this would fix it. If we say x or 0, meaning string, unless it's nothing, then we take a 0. Okay, now this, even though the tests were going easy on me, even though I got a weird lucky streak of ones that accidentally let me pass, you might assume that this is my debug mode, my internal testing, and I'm going to release this for the real track and field meet. I don't want to crash then. I want to fix all the problems now. So if I hit attempt now I'm passing the test, which could have strict ones, which could have weird ones in there. Now I submit. Okay, and now let's look at the solutions from other people, see what they've got. Here's one. Okay, they're doing the making change, they're formatting it, beautiful. They're doing the split thing, they're getting the range, and it looks like they must have sorted it before it gets to this point. I would assume this function would just blow up if it got stuff not sorted. Okay, they use the double slash integer division. This one, yeah, they're doing the middle thing, and this is like a way to check even odd. Yeah, they're doing the sort before they pass it into any of these functions, and then they're putting it with the string format method, which is probably just because this is an old solution. Maybe they did it before f strings, or maybe they just didn't know, but I think today most people would use f strings. Oh, look at that, you can import median and mean, so we didn't even have to do that. Here's somebody who imported numpy, which is for mathematical operations. A little fancier than this. You wouldn't need numpy for just median and mode and stuff, but it's fine. Looking good. Looking good. So it looks like there's a nice variety in these. Some people imported different packages, some people formatted different ways. It looks like some of these are quite old as well. And if you were to look through them, you would see many ideas. Like, oh, I'll use that in the future, or oh, I didn't know people could do that. So check it out. Thanks.